A reading from Matthew chapter 27. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him, for he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" In the same way, the robbers who were crucified with him also heaped insults on him. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani," which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing there heard this, they said, "He's calling Elijah." Immediately, one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar, put it on a stick, and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. My God, why have you forsaken me?" It's no wonder that Jesus feels abandoned as he hangs on the cross. We read that everyone he passes is jeering at him. Even the criminals on his right and left are hurling insults his way. And only hours before, the crowds were crying out for his crucifixion. As I hear this story, I can't help but wonder, what would I have done? If I were in that crowd, what would I have done? Whom would I have chosen? It's an amazing scene. One day we see the crowds hailing Jesus as king. We hear the entire city is stirred. Thousands of people flooding out of their houses to see Jesus and cry out, "Save us! Hosanna, save us!" Next thing we know, Jesus is on trial, and these people are choosing a murderer, crying out, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" It's crazy what happened. In a matter of days, it was like the whole world was flipped upside down. So let's back up to this trial for a moment. It's important to know that the Jews of that day were living in oppression, living in a land that was occupied by the Romans, and they had basically 3 options. They could join up with the other side and become tax collectors. They could try to sneak by and suffer through, or they could take matters into their own hands and fight back like Barabbas did. The Bible tells us that he was in prison for an insurrection and for murder. He was a part of a group of rebels that would hide daggers in their cloaks and then flash mob style would kill a band of Romans in these insurrections. So when they say Barabbas is in prison for murder, I'm betting he didn't kill a Jew. More than likely, he had killed a Roman. So the craziest part of this trial is that possibly Jesus and Barabbas wanted a lot of the same things. They wanted freedom for the Jews. They wanted freedom from the Romans. They wanted life and hope for their people. But Jesus and Barabbas taught very different ways. Crowds had gathered to hear Jesus on the hilltop talking about turning the other cheek and loving your enemies and praying for those who persecute you. But now he's doing it, and it's not working. It was one thing to hear him preach it. It was another thing to see him do it. And you can just feel the heart of those people. Come on, Jesus. Fight back. It's not going to work. It's just not going to work. You're just going to get yourself killed. So they choose Barabbas. At least he's going to fight for us. At least he's doing something. Seeing his people crying for his crucifixion, seeing the crowd eagerly taking responsibility for his death, seeing those whom he loved watching from a distance. It's no wonder that Jesus feels abandoned and forsaken. And the troubling thing is that we make the same decision every day that the crowds made that day. Every day we must choose between the way of Barabbas and the way of Jesus. Every day we must choose whether to fight or to forgive. We must choose whether to follow Christ, even to the cross, or to watch from a distance. The way of Jesus alienated him from the leaders, the crowds, and even from his closest friends. And now here in his death, his radical display of love and power and surrender, we hear him crying out, "Why have you forsaken me?" A man who fought to bring dignity and hope to even the most outcast dies a lonely death. Perhaps this was his greatest sacrifice, not losing his life, but losing his friends, losing all those whom he held most dear because they just couldn't understand what he was doing. For those crowds, for those disciples on that day, they left behind the way of Jesus. And as easy as it is for us to say, if only you knew what we know now, if only you could see the end of the story. If we're honest with ourselves, we face the same choice and make the same decision. How often do we choose to leave behind the way of Jesus? Can we admit that sometimes we are the ones who are looking on from a distance and are the ones to leave Jesus abandoned? Our God, why have we forsaken you?